They do not start by hurting you, they start by measuring what you will excuse. And the moment you explain away the first small disrespect, they learn your price. That is why their behavior feels confusing before it feels obviously cruel. You are not imagining the pattern, and you are not overreacting to nothing. Manipulators test weakness quietly because open cruelty comes later after your boundaries look negotiable. They look for hesitation, guilt, over-explaining, and that reflex to keep the peace. Most people think weakness means being too emotional, but that is not the real target. What they actually hunt is your willingness to abandon yourself for temporary harmony. Once you see these tests clearly, their charm stops looking impressive and starts looking desperate. And that shift matters, because clarity is the moment their control begins collapsing. The first tactic is small disrespect delivered casually, then disguised as personality, stress, or humor. They interrupt you, mock your taste, ignore your text, then act normal afterward. If you react, they call you sensitive, intense, dramatic, or impossible to please. If you stay quiet, they register silence as permission and push slightly further next time. This is not random moodiness, it is information gathering dressed up as everyday interaction. They want to know whether your discomfort makes you firmer or makes you easier. A healthy person notices your reaction and adjusts, because respect matters more than ego. A manipulator notices your reaction and studies it, because leverage matters more than connection. That is why the early insults feel strangely minor and strangely memorable at once. Your body knows something crossed a line before your mind finds words. You replay the moment, then minimize it because nothing dramatic happened on paper. But your nervous system records patterns, not excuses, and it rarely lies. The practical shift is simple: stop debating intent when the impact keeps repeating. You do not need courtroom evidence before honoring your own internal now. Another tactic is warmth followed by sudden withdrawal, especially after you open up. They listen deeply, mirror your pain, make you feel chosen, then go cold. The cold text arrives after intimacy and your brain starts chasing the original warmth. That chase is the trap, because uncertainty creates stronger attachment than consistent care. You start wondering what changed, what you said, what tone they noticed. Meanwhile, they are learning how quickly you self-blame when connection gets threatened. This tactic works because your mind prefers painful certainty over unresolved emotional ambiguity. So you overanalyze, reach out again, and accidentally teach them how to pull you. The deeper truth is brutal. Inconsistency is often used to manufacture your pursuit. They do less, and you invest more because your mind wants emotional balance restored. When someone repeatedly disappears after closeness, stop rewarding confusion with extra access. Let silence expose intentions instead of using your energy to rescue the connection. The third tactic is baiting your reaction, then blaming you for reacting. They provoke, poke, dismiss, compare, accuse, and then suddenly become the calm one. This is why toxic arguments leave you feeling guilty, even when they started everything. They push you toward frustration, then point at your frustration as the problem. It can happen in relationships, families, friendships, and polished office conversations too. A jealous coworker leaves you out, smiles politely, then says you seem defensive. A partner twists your words, ignores context, then says you always escalate everything. A parent humiliates you indirectly, then acts hurt when you finally sound upset. The goal is not truth, the goal is controlling the emotional frame. If they define your reaction as the issue, their original behavior escapes inspection. That is why you can leave a conversation feeling wrong without understanding exactly why. You were maneuvered into defending your tone instead of examining their pattern. Here is the correction most people need: your reaction is not the whole story. Ask yourself what happened right before you were pushed to explain yourself. That moment usually reveals the hidden move they wanted you to miss. The fourth tactic is fake vulnerability used to bypass your boundaries. They suddenly share pain, guilt, childhood wounds, or stress exactly when accountability appears. Now compassion gets weaponized, and your boundary starts feeling cruel instead of necessary. You were ready to address disrespect, but now you are comforting the person causing it. This does not mean their pain is fake, it means the timing is strategic. Some people reveal hurt to build trust, but manipulators reveal hurt to avoid limits. The result is emotional confusion, because empathy and self-protection start feeling incompatible. You think being kind requires staying available even while your peace keeps getting damaged. Real compassion does not require self-abandonment, and healthy people do not demand it. You can acknowledge someone's pain without reopening a door that keeps hurting you. A calm response sounds like this: "I hear that, and my decision remains the same." The fifth tactic is forcing you into endless explanation until your confidence collapses. They act confused by plain boundaries, misread simple words, and keep reopening settled issues. You say no once, and they respond like the conversation never happened. You explain again, softer this time, hoping clarity will finally create respect. But with manipulators, repeated explanation often weakens your message instead of strengthening it. Every extra sentence suggests your boundary is still open for negotiation. And the more you justify yourself, the more they search for emotional openings. They are not always listening for understanding, sometimes they are listening for pressure points. This is where many strong people get trapped, because they confuse clarity with persuasion. You can explain perfectly and still be ignored by someone benefiting from misunderstanding you. That is not a communication failure on your part, it is a control strategy. And if this pattern keeps happening, the real conversation is no longer verbal. The real conversation is about who gets to define reality, pace, and consequences. Here's the dangerous part most people miss after years around manipulators. You start treating basic respect like a reward you must earn through patience. You become extra reasonable, extra careful, extra forgiving, and strangely disconnected from anger. But anger is not always the enemy. Sometimes it is overdue information. It tells you something precious is being crossed, drained, twisted, or stolen. Manipulators benefit when you fear your own anger more than their behavior, because then they can keep testing you while you stay busy self-correcting. The common mistake is trying to win fairness from people who profit from imbalance. You explain longer, forgive faster, reveal more, and hope sincerity changes their character. Sometimes you even hand them your wounds, believing honesty will produce gentleness. But manipulative people often treat your openness as a map, not a gift. They learn what scares you, what hooks you, and what makes you return. That is why the smarter move is less emotional display and more calm observation. You do not need to perform your pain for someone committed to misunderstanding it. You need cleaner boundaries, shorter responses, and consequences that do not require permission. Practical power starts with noticing where you still rush to defend yourself. That rush usually means someone touched guilt, fear, shame, or your need for approval. Slow that moment down, because speed is where manipulators often steal your frame. A pause can protect you better than the perfect comeback ever will. Instead of immediately explaining, let a brief silence reveal their next move. If they keep pushing, your answer can get shorter instead of longer. You can say, "I already answered that," and then stop feeding the loop. Time, Mike. You can say, "I am not debating my decision," and leave the room. You can say, "You are entitled to your view," and keep your peace. Notice how none of those lines chase understanding, approval, or emotional rescue. They are not designed to be liked, they are designed to end manipulation. Another power move is refusing to correct every false story told about you. Toxic people often spread distortion because your reputation feels easier to manage than your boundaries. They want you panicked, explaining everywhere, trying to control every version of yourself. But the calmer response is strategic. Let consistent behavior speak longer than reactive defense. The people who matter usually notice patterns without needing your frantic explanation. And the ones eager to believe lies were rarely safe for you anyway. Real weakness is not feeling hurt when someone crosses you and denies it. Real weakness is betraying your own perception just to stay emotionally included. Real weakness is calling your intuition paranoia because someone charming told you so. Real weakness is staying available after repeated disrespect because leaving feels too selfish. And none of that makes you stupid, It makes you human and hopeful. Many decent people were trained early to tolerate discomfort before trusting themselves. They learned that love required patience, silence, self-doubt, and emotional labor. So when manipulation appears, it feels familiar before it feels dangerous. Familiarity is powerful because the nervous system often confuses known pain with safety. That is why insight matters more than anger alone when you want lasting change. Once you can name the tactic, you stop drowning inside the feeling. You see the disrespect test, the withdrawal test, the reaction test, the guilt test. You see the endless confusion test, where your exhaustion gets mistaken for surrender. And when you see the test, you stop trying to pass it. That is the beginning of emotional power most toxic people cannot tolerate. Because your calm becomes harder to steer, harder to shame, and harder to bait. You start noticing who respects simple boundaries and who treats them like personal attacks. That difference tells you everything you need to know about future harm. Healthy people may feel disappointed, but they still adjust when you are clear. Manipulative people treat your clarity like a challenge because control was their real comfort. So stop measuring relationships only by chemistry, history, attraction, or potential. Measure them by what happens after you say no, slow down, or disagree. That is where masks slip and real character starts speaking clearly to you. If someone needs your confusion to keep access, distance is not cruelty. If someone punishes your boundary, the punishment is the proof you needed. If someone only values you when you are compliant, they do not value you. Your job is not to become untouchable, emotionless, or impossible to hurt. Your job is to become harder to confuse and easier to trust yourself. That means fewer explanations, clearer limits, slower reactions, and faster exits from toxic loops. It means believing repeated behavior over polished words, public charm, or private apologies. It means noticing when your body tightens before your mind invents excuses. It means letting people lose access instead of letting yourself lose peace. And once you stop proving your worth to manipulators, their tests lose power. Because the strongest person in the room is really the loudest one. It is usually the one who sees the game and declines to play. The manipulator hates clean endings because ambiguity keeps the door open for future control. So when you leave a toxic conversation, do not reopen it to ease their discomfort. Closure from toxic people is often another performance, not a final honest moment. Your peace grows faster when you stop asking unstable people to explain stability. Some tests happen in public because witnesses make you more likely to self-contain. They know you will swallow discomfort to avoid looking difficult, rude, or emotional. That is why your quietest no can be more powerful than your longest speech. The lesson is not to fear toxic people, it is to read them faster. And once you read them faster, you stop volunteering your softest places.